What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Dash. Like we said on Monday, this is our special crossover event with our crossover show with our opponent's school. I'd like to welcome Cole Bagley from Utah Dash. Super cool guy, Cole. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I'm Cole Bagley. I'm the assistant editor for the Daily Utah Chronicle. It's just the University of Utah student newspaper, sports editor. Yeah, just excited to be here. University of Utah, Colorado game. This one's big. This is a big one. This year, I think more so than any year in probably the past 5 years. This is a big game.
Yeah. Like you said, big game. Before we kind of preview into it, I want to go into a little bit of the history. And you were going to say you want to speak on the rivalry, but this is a rivalry that the Pac-12 definitely needs to not necessarily start marketing better, but it needs to put some of their time and effort into it, because this is a rivalry that can potentially be one of the more back and forth ones every year.
For sure, yeah. You and I were just talking pre-show. I don't think the Pac-12 takes this rivalry as seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding, we're the two newest schools to the Pac-12 back in 2011. I believe both schools joined the conference, and so it's been about 10 years. But this rivalry just isn't as respected. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that some of the biggest rivalries are in-state rivalries in the Pac-12. Oregon State and Oregon, Washington State and Washington, Arizona State, some of the California teams. And while, it is Utah and Colorado, we share state borders. We share the Rockies. It's called the Rumble in the Rockies for a reason. But I think another reason that this isn't taken as seriously is since joining the Pac-12, Utah has dominated this a little bit. It's 7-2. And all time, interestingly enough, Colorado does lead the series. I think it's 33-32.
It's pretty close.
It's very close.
Yeah.
But since joining the Pac-12, this rivalry it hasn't, if it was out of the 9 games, 5-4, 4-5, something like that, it would probably have a little bit more to it. But as of right now, the 7-2, it just hasn't created that intensity that you look for.
Yeah. I think for me, it like you said, it comes down to, because we're the newest two teams in the Pac-12, and this rivalry has kind of been established, but as we've seen over the years, the Arizona State-Arizona rivalry has been dominated by Arizona State. The USC UCLA dominated by USC. Oregon's dominated theirs. This is a rivalry. While it may not seem as close. Obviously, like you said, Utah leads 7-2, but last year, like, Colorado could have played spoiler to Utah's postseason hopes. Obviously, Utah crushed them, but that kind of set up. 2016, Colorado beat Utah to become Pac-12 champions. Utah wins that game. They spoil Colorado's season. It's while it might not be this close, these situations that Utah and Colorado have found themselves in come game time have had huge stakes to it. And I think this is a rivalry as we've seen this Colorado team kind of come out of nowhere. We haven't got to see a lot of this Utah team this year, but in the 3 games they've played, they've proven that they can be a really good team, that this is a rivalry that each year can go really back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like we were talking about, I just think this rivalry needs a little bit more time. I think, only 9 matchups since joining the Pac-12. When you mention the Rumble and the Rockies to somebody at the University of Utah, if they're not seriously into Utah football, they might look at you and be like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Nobody's blood is boiling in Salt Lake City when you mention this game. We at the University of Utah, we make shirts that say beat BYU. We don't make shirts that say beat the Buffaloes or beat the. But I would love to see that. I want more time to go by and for there to be really big games that maybe we continue to find ourselves in situations where one of these teams is the favorite to win the Pac-12 South.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose, it's busted by the other team, and things like that. That's what creates that, really getting on each other's nerves and wanting to just cream the other side. And so what we really need is just more time. And I think as time goes on, this rivalry will get better and people's blood will boil when you mention it on both campuses.
Yeah. Like you said, and the Utah BYU heated rivalry. For us, it's Colorado State, but over the past like 6 years, it's been dominated by CU, and Colorado doesn't play Nebraska enough for it to truly be the rivalry it was back in the 90s and early 2000s. So, like you said, give it time. Let this rivalry play out. Obviously, they get to play each other every year, which is nice that they're both in the Pac-12 South. Like you said, let these opportunities arise that one team has this chance to win the Pac-12 South and one team can play spoiler, much like we saw last year, much like we're going to see tomorrow. That these type of games create this kind of tension, as Sammy says in the chat, that this rivalry needs to create the tension between Utah and Colorado. That come this kind of game, which is always usually later in the season, that hey, this is the true rivalry game that our schools want to be looking at each other. That we're marketing and we're branding this, that it's beat Utah, not beat CSU or beat Nebraska. It's beat Utah, beat the Utes. Let's crush their Pac-12 South dreams, like you said, and give the Pac-12 a reason to give us the time and attention that they're giving USC and Oregon and Washington and Arizona State in their respective rivalries, that prove to them that, hey, we've built this rivalry up to be where every year this game is close and this game means something. Give us the time and resources that you're throwing into those, not say pointless rivalries, but those games are usually pointless, that our games are now meaningful every single year.
Yeah, obviously all I know is what I hear on the campus of the University of Utah, but what do people talk about the University of Utah in Colorado? Is it more serious on the Colorado side than it is on the Utah side? Is this a game that the students get up for, that the team is like, hey, we really want to beat Utah?
I think it's at a higher level than what you mentioned that Utah's at, but it's not nearly what it needs to be. For us, it's still the beat Colorado State, just because it's like we call them the little brothers, and we just demolished them the past 6 years, and it's, while the game's not usually competitive, it's always comical to see the rebuttals that Colorado State is. And like I said, in the Nebraska rivalry, that's just like the tradition. And back in the 90s when it was Nebraska and Colorado at the top of the college football world. But I think the Utah rivalry is kind of gaining some steam, especially after 2016, especially after last year, where it's, these games have to it. I think this Colorado fan base and this Colorado football team is, hey, this is our closest Pac-12 rival. Let's go out and beat them. And obviously, like you said, it may not be the same for Utah. And like you said, it's just going to take time for this rivalry to come into fruition.
Yeah, these two teams didn't meet for a very long time. I think it went 61, and then the next time these two teams played was 2011.
Yeah,
there was like a 50-year break before the game started to pick back up again. So that as well attributes to why it's just not as serious. But I think it'd be fun to add more to this game. Rumble in the Rockies, it's an okay slogan, but why don't we come up with some sort of trophy to play for? Like something similar in the MLS. I believe Real Salt Lake and the Colorado Rapids play for the Rocky Mountain Cup or something like that. Have a trophy at the end of it. Have something meaningful, like the Alabama and Auburn rivalry. Yeah, that thing. Come up with a more catchy name for it, so and give us some hardware so that these two teams are thinking, okay, we want to have that trophy in our case this season because we've had it the last 2 years. So I just add some more things to it. Add a few things that get the blood boiling, that really make it so it's like, okay, let's take this seriously. Because you had mentioned, Colorado wants to beat up on Colorado State. It's the same thing with Utah and BYU. Yeah. But what made those rivalries great is a long history, is, bad blood, is games coming down to the wire, and we just haven't had that yet. So give it some more time, and I think this rivalry will be a really good one.
Yeah. Like we mentioned, as we've seen in the past couple of years, this type of games have had a lot of stake to it. And I want to move on to our next segment, which is previewing tomorrow's game. That at the beginning of the season, if you would have told me that it was Colorado in the position of an undefeated team and truly fighting for something in the Pac-12, and Utah was the was a team I would have called you crazy. When I know when Kieran and I came out with our predictions, and when you and Sammy came out with your predictions, this was kind of like the game we both circled on our calendars. But it kind of seems like the tables have turned on both of our teams.
Definitely has. Colorado's 4-0. I'm envious. I really am. After back-to-back South championships, 1 and 2 has a really bitter taste to it. The first time since 2007 that we started at 0 and 2. So this was a fairly big step back for the program. I mean, after 2 seasons of not necessarily dominating the Pac-12 South, but taking it pretty handily and going to the championship game. It's tough. However, I do think Utah is better than their record dictates, and I don't think that the 4-0 makes Colorado this big, scary, heavily favored, undefeated team. Just kind of looking at some of the at Colorado's games, they barely squeaked by UCLA in a shootout. They won by a field goal against Stanford, 20-10 over San Diego State, non-conference opponent, and beat an 0-4 Arizona team just by 11. But 4-0 is 4-0. A win is a win, and four wins in a row is 4-0. But I think Utah is better than that 1 and 2 records dictating.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think we definitely haven't got to see a lot of this Utah team. And then the games we have seen, it's been kind of like a tale of two halves. You definitely got beat by a better USC team, and
for sure.
We would have gotten beaten by a better USC team. But that Washington game, it's like an opportunity to make a statement win, and it's that defense kind of collapsed. But like you said, there's no doubt that this 1 and 2 Utah team is better than the record suggests, as well as this 4-0 Colorado team is. We're not this big, scary powerhouse. In the past 2 games, Neuer has looked pretty dreadful passing the ball. He definitely didn't look as good as he did against UCLA and against Stanford. That being said, Jarek Broussard is having one heck of a season on the ground. Has 733 rushing yards through 4 games. The fact that he potentially could get a 1,000-yard rushing season in an abridged schedule is pretty ridiculous. But the one thing that this Colorado team does have going for them is their defense. The linebacking duo of Nate Landman and Carson Wells have wreaked havoc the past 2 opponents. We held a San Diego State team who, while they didn't have the best offense, they definitely had the chance to be explosive. Held them to 3 offensive points. After that, the 13 points we gave up in the Arizona game, the defense locked down, held them to that. And when it comes down to it, it's really going to be the CU's defense that's going to take over the game, that's going to support a very potent CU run game and really grind out the win, especially in a game tomorrow that looks like it's going to be cold. There's going to be snow on the ground. It's going to be a game really, really won in the trench. I think the 2 keys are the CU run game and the Colorado defense. I want to get your take on what needs to go right for Utah to eke out the upset in Folsom Field.
Yeah, so just reiterating, Utah's 1 and 2. However, their 2 losses are against the best team in the North and the best team in the South. Definitely outmatched against USC. Never were in that game. Didn't expect to win that football game. And they just unfortunately lost composure against Washington. After not allowing a single point in the first half, they allowed 24 points. And after scoring 21 points in the first half, didn't score a single point in the second half. But it was only a 3-point loss. And so going off of that, this is going to be a football game. This is going to be a close game. Is Utah favored? No, but Colorado should not treat them lightly. Utah's coming off their first win, an outstanding performance by 2 of their offensive players in Britton Covey and Ty Jordan. And their defense, the Utah defense, had a clutch back-to-back 4th down stops to seal the win against Oregon State. I think they've made leaps and bounds, and this will be a big game. So what Utah kind of has going for them, they want to continue to dominate Colorado. They want this to be 8-2. They want, out of 10 meetings, they want to be 8-2. Knocking off a top 25 team, this is the biggest opportunity that we've had all season.
Yeah.
And to get up to a 500 record, which gives themselves a shot at bowl eligibility. Utah still would have to win the game afterwards, but if they lose tomorrow, we're not going bowling. And that's tough because I know that both the program and the fan base, we lost 2 games because of COVID. Mm-hmm. We want an extra game. We want to see our boys. We want to see those U boys take the field and play again. And I think this is one of the first years, probably in the last 4 or 5, that Utah has really been the underdog coming into this. And I think they want to prove that. They want to show that, hey, it doesn't matter what kind of a year we're having, we can compete with these guys. And so just some of the things on the field is, you had already mentioned, Neuer looks like easy prey right now.
Yeah.
He has not been playing well. And to be honest, this Utah defense has been playing well above their age. They've had an interception in every single game so far, and multiple against Washington. So I think they will look to expose him. And I think that's one of the keys to victory for Utah is just continuing to make Neuer look bad. Don't let him get into a rhythm and make him cough up the football and throw some more interceptions. The biggest worry is that run game, which has been great all season with Broussard. He's averaging 183 a game. That's a heck of a lot of yards.
Yeah.
If we play last week on the defensive line, I think Colorado will take the game. But if we hold that line and we shut down those gaps and those holes like we did against Washington, to me, that's the biggest key to victory. Is it's going to be won on that defensive line.
Yeah, your co-host Sammy commented, the Utah rush defense is going to have a big game tomorrow. I think that's what it's going to come down to. Tomorrow we're going to see a high-powered Colorado defense versus a super underrated Utah defense that's really coming on at the right time. It's really going to be about who can stop the opposing offense better. Like you said, Neuer's got to play better. If he keeps coughing up the ball like the way he's done in the San Diego State game and the way he did in the Arizona game, that puts a lot of pressure on Broussard, who has so far kind of knocked it out of the park. There's no doubt about it. Just the fact that he's averaging 183 rush yards a game is pretty insane. You think of a running back averages that in college, you'd think they'd win blowout games, but Colorado likes to make it interesting in the second half of football. Really like to bring it down to the end of the game. But I think this Colorado defense is playing too good for them not to lose a football game tomorrow. They have done exceptionally well at stopping the run and really forcing a quarterback to use his arm, which comes to my next question for you. We've seen a little bit of I want to say inconsistency at the quarterback position at Utah, but you've kind of flip-flop between quarterbacks, and obviously you're set on one now. Do you see it as a potential weakness in that Utah offense?
Oh, absolutely. Jake Bentley's been one of our biggest weaknesses all season long. They were originally planning with going with Cam Rising, the sophomore transfer from Texas, and he got injured in the first quarter, I believe, against USC. Jake Bentley, a senior transfer from South Carolina. I expected more from him, and to be honest, he's just been a disappointment. He had 8 or 9 turnovers in those first 2 games. That's just not okay.
Yeah.
The offense had that many turnovers in the first 2 games, and I believe 4 or 5 of those were from Jake Bentley. 3 interceptions, I think 2 fumbles. You expect more from a senior, especially a senior that played in the SEC. He looked okay last week. No turnovers, which obviously helped fuel Utah to a victory. I mean, Oregon State dominated the possession of the ball in the fourth quarter, and so it was good to make sure that we weren't giving them extra time, extra possessions. And so, but I think with the elements, it's looking like there's going to be some snow on the ground. I don't think the pass game is going to be as prevalent. And Bentley's pretty good with his legs, and then we've got a young freshman in the backfield who's really coming into his own, and had a career game last game with a touchdown, over 150 yards rushing. So I expect there to be a lot of running on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, like you said, the elements are definitely going to play a big role tomorrow. But for me, I think the X factor tomorrow is Sam Neuer, and it's how he plays. If he can regain the form he played against UCLA and Stanford, where he's the pass game is obviously not going to be big tomorrow, but he's passing conservatively and he's using his best asset, which are his legs. We've seen him break off for huge runs and be able to really extend the play, much like you see with mobile QBs nowadays. If he can really tune into his talents and truly his game and not play out of himself, I really think that CU is going to win a very hard fought football game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I definitely would say that, you know, based off of what we've seen happen this season, the tables have turned and it's Colorado's to lose. But
Yeah.
it's a close game for Colorado to lose.
Yeah. Speaking of how tables have turned, I want to move on to our final segment here with about 10 minutes left in our show. While this is kind of more of maybe a topic for our respective shows, but since the season is ending, I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe some takeaways from not only the Utah season, but a quite wild general Pac-12 season.
It's been wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's been one of the most 2020 things that I think we've seen this year. So many game cancellations. I'm disappointed in the handling of the Pac-12, how they jumped in the last second, and I think not necessarily put these athletes at a disadvantage, but just kind of use them. I feel like it was more about we don't want to be seen as the last Power Five not to play football, rather than giving our athletes the best opportunity to play at the highest level, to play safe, and to not lose out on opportunities. Now, with eligibility being frozen, I guess that kind of takes care of it. But it's been a crazy one to say the least. I mean, Sammy and I, we really thought that Utah would be gunning for a Pac-12, a three-peat, at least a good chance. And so I'm surprised to be in this situation, but it's been tough, to miss your first two games and then to start the season against USC, lose your starting quarterback, to throw in a backup quarterback. And, Utah did lose a lot of players to the NFL last year. I believe they lost 9 starters.
Yeah.
We lost our 2 best offensive players. We lost our big play defensive players. But I've been really impressed with a couple things. Been really impressed with the secondary and the defense as a whole. There's a lot of freshmen out there. At times we have 5 or 6 freshmen that are taking reps for the UN consistently. Especially the secondary, they've forced an interception every single game. They've done a great job of listening to the coaches, disguising themselves, and picking off the ball. Really, really excited to see how they progress moving forward. I mean, give these guys another year, a year after that, and we're going to be looking at a similar defense to what Utah had the last 2 years.
Mm.
And as well, on offense, the quarterback position, I don't really know what to make of it. It's just kind of it's a bad situation, trying to make the most of it. But who I love is Ty Jordan, our running back, our freshman guy. He has been phenomenal. We're seeing flashes of Zach Moss in this kid. I mean, he's so young and he's playing at an elite level. I don't know if you've seen a whole lot about what he's doing, but I think he was pushing 170 plus yards last game. He had 27 touches, a touchdown. He's the football. To me, he's the brightest spot that we've had this year for Utah. So, in a year that we're 1-2, it's a bitter taste, but there are good things and a good future for Utah.
Before I move on to mine, my co-host Kieran commented question for you saying, what do the Buffs have to be most worried about, I'm assuming, for tomorrow's game?
That's a good question. I'd say 2 things. I'd say the Utah secondary, don't treat them lightly. If they decide to throw the football, you can expect some disguised formations, hiding those safeties and watch out for those young guns because, it takes a lot to beat them. I mean, they did get beat pretty hard against USC, but they held their own quite a few times. I mean, 33 points against arguably potentially the toughest team in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Bad. And then on offense, watch out for that freshman, Ty Jordan. He's the real deal. I think this is a kid that in a couple years is going to be wearing an NFL jersey.
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway for me to start with this Colorado team is Kieran and I discussed that this team is very young. Besides the linebacker position, the defensive line, and the quarterback position, CU, much like Utah, started a lot of freshmen, especially in that secondary, especially in the wide receiver core. And we have minimal expectations for what was going to happen, and we've been more than impressed. The wide receiver core looks really, really, really promising. We have Laviska's little brother, Levante Chenault, Brendan Rice, who is the son of Hall of Famer Jerry Rice, kind of cool. Katie Nixon, who might come back next year. Just a lot of good potential out of this year. This year for me was really just kind of gauging where this team was at. None Kieran didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Neither did the whole entire Pac-12 that this team would be 4-0 and competing for a Pac-12 South title. And it's great and all, but I'm really looking forward to this future that a guy like Jarek Broussard is only a sophomore, and if he's showing you what he can do in 4 games, imagine what he can do in 12 games. Imagine what he can do against a fuller schedule. When he's actually running 100%, he's going to be really awesome to watch. A secondary full of freshmen who definitely have room to improve, who have bent but not broken. We saw, especially in the UCLA and Stanford game, that game was a lot closer than it should have, just because this freshman secondary was super inexperienced. And we get to see Sam Neuer next year. So theoretically, we're losing arguably our best player, Nate Lamon, to the draft. But I'm really excited to see what happens next year. In terms of the Pac-12, I think that, like you said, no doubt about it, it was a wild season. Out of any season, of course, for Colorado to go 4-0, they chose this season to go 4-0 and be undefeated and kind of get conned out of a Pac-12 South chance at the Pac-12 South title just because of the cancellation with Utah. But like you said, the way the Pac-12 just kind of jumped into it the last second and kind of kept up with, they don't want to be the last team out, just kind of goes to show more of the internal issues inside of the Pac-12. It's known that Larry Scott is not the most beloved commissioner of a Power 5 conference. I definitely think they could have handled the whole situation between Colorado and USC, and then how they're handling Utah, Oregon. It could have been handled better. I also think that Pac-12 needs to get rid of the divisions and do what the ACC did. And, a Pac-12 title game truly should be the 2 best teams in the conference, no matter if they're the South, no matter if they're the North. But I don't make the decisions.
What happens if both USC and Colorado are 5-0, but Colorado has their 1 out of conference game? Who do you think? Do you think they just go with USC?
And that's what's going to happen. Assuming Colorado wins tomorrow, and assuming USC beats UCLA, USC, although we're undefeated, but they have a 5-0 record in Pac-12 play, and we have a 4-0 record in Pac-12 play. Now, this is to no fault of our own that the USC game and the Arizona State game got canceled. Right. I'm not going to blame USC or ASU that they had COVID cases. I wouldn't wish illness on anybody. It's just unfortunate, and it's just the way it happens that a 1-loss team from the North gets it over an undefeated Colorado team in the South. And if we didn't have divisions, we wouldn't have this problem. And you truly have the 2 best teams in the Pac-12 conference title, much like we're seeing with the ACC, that even though Clemson's a 1-loss team, they're still second best team in that conference, and they get another chance to play Notre Dame.
Yeah. I mean, it would be fun if both these teams are undefeated, that following week they just let them go at it, USC and Colorado, and really just prove, okay, who's the better team? Because while I can see why they would choose USC, because they if they are 5-0, it's 5-0 in the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. Colorado's 4-0 with a 1-0 out of conference, but it would be 2 5-0 records, and I think the ratings for that game would potentially be the most watched Pac-12 game of the whole year, besides the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, 2 college football playoff ranked teams, and arguably the best game in the Pac-12 this year. and you can truly say who the best Pac-12 team is. But all this doesn't matter if Colorado doesn't beat Utah tomorrow, and if Utah plays spoiler, then we're like, we don't have any say in it anyways. But that being said, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, having a quick conversation with me. I know we're both super excited for the game tomorrow. I recommend checking out Cole and Sammy's show over at Utah Dash. Awesome guys. If you want to plug it really quickly.
Yeah, next week on Sunday, we're going to have Ute Zone analyst and writer Steve Bartle on with us talking all about recruitment, things like that. So we're really excited. We're excited for tomorrow's game. So tune into that tomorrow and then come and watch us on Sunday. Steve Bartle is going to be fantastic. We're going to pick his brain, his professional brain about all these things that are going to be going on.
Yeah. I'm excited for the game tomorrow. I'm excited for this rivalry to come into light and truly get the next best Pac-12 rivalry. But with that, on behalf of Cole and I want to thank you guys so much and see y'all next show.